Cliff May is the founder and president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. What jumped out at you from that interview, what he said on Iran, Cliff?
Well, that he intends to get this job completed. I think that's very important. I would like very much to see the regime collapse. If the regime is not going to collapse, then I think you definitely have to go down another echelon or so. Those who are in control right now, they're true believers in jihad against America, against the West. Get down another couple of echelons, and you may find some agnostics and charlatans who'll be more pliable. But overall, we could have friends in this country if they had decent leaders, and the decent leaders can come to power if this regime is collapsed economically and probably kinetically as well, a combination of that.
When you hear that Carg's at max capacity, they haven't offloaded any oil in 4 days, they're leaking it into the Strait, does that tell you that they're kind of at the end, or does this just tell you these people are crazy and are going to go down with the ship?
Yeah, look, we are cutting off the revenue. That's going to make a difference when they can't pay their soldiers. They can't pay the Basiji thugs who go out and beat people up and kill them in the streets. That's going to have an impact. But when I talk about the true believers, yeah, I'm talking about people who think my job is either to conquer or to become a martyr. And I'm happy to become a martyr because good things will happen to me when I get to heaven. And that's why I say you may have to go beyond them. These are not rational actors, and they don't do cost-benefit calculations. I think we hope they would. And don't forget, we talk about the opposition. This regime killed 30 to 40,000 members of the opposition. That's who the protesters were. And they've cut off the internet. They've made it very, very tough. I think more will have to be done and to get either reasonable people in power or, again, to let the average people in the country take over.
Would you expect leadership strikes hitting more of their missile capabilities, their drone capabilities, maybe pepper them throughout the Strait, or would you expect bridge and power plant day, which could be pretty devastating?
It could be pretty devastating. Look, I think the president has tried very hard, and I think this is very commendable on his part, to leave in place the economic infrastructure while hitting the military infrastructure. So, as you know, on Carg Island, they hit the military, but they're not letting it be used for oil shipments. But it's in place if you got a decent leadership, or even, as I say, a pliable leadership. At a certain point, he may have to go further than that, and I understand that. And I think people in Iran, the people from what I know, they understand that too. But if you can find out where people like General Ahmad Vahidi, who's the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, where is he? Is he in a bunker? Do we know where? The CIA, the Mossad? If so, I would suggest that taking out that leadership is probably more productive than taking out anything military. But you may need to do both at once. And I'll leave that to General Kane and Admiral Cooper to decide. They're very competent.
Xi Jinping, you heard the president describe their conversation about the Strait. He offered to help. Trump said, we don't want it. We don't want to have to trade anything for the help. Do you think the Chinese would help, could help, or do you think if a deal ever even did go down, that it would just be kept secret because no one really wants to show their cards?
Look, I think it's good that Xi Jinping said the Strait of Hormuz should be open. It should be what it is, an international waterway, not the property, the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think that's helpful. He said they shouldn't have nukes. That's helpful. Do I think he'll do more than that? Do I think he's going to twist any theocratic arms? I don't actually think so, but I'm glad he said that. And look, while I agree with everything Charles said in your last segment, I do have one quibble. I don't think Xi Jinping is a Gorbachev. I think if you study this guy and who he is a committed communist. He believes China is the Middle Kingdom and that China, in time, is going to displace America as the dominant power on earth, and that is very much his goal. Now, what he may say is, okay, Trump he's the tough guy, he's a bit unpredictable, I don't have to do this right now, I'm younger than he is, I can wait, my economy needs some shoring up, we can do that for now. But I think it's important to keep in mind, this guy he has grand ambitions, and they're for global dominance of what is already the strongest communist party in all of history by just about any measure.
He might have dreams, but reality can smack you in the face. The country might not be capable of overtaking the United States. So we'll see how it all plays out. Cliff, have a good weekend. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.